Hey guys, MTGirl here. Today is part 2 of my Shadows over Innistrad Deck Builders Toolkit video. So in the first part, I unboxed this little toolkit and got all the cards out in the box. So in this part, what we're going to do is build a deck out of these cards and only these cards. So sealed deck building. I'm going to go over a little bit about how you would build this deck, and then maybe some more experienced players will get a better idea of, is this kit really worth it to build a deck? How much of the rest of your collection would you really need to put into a deck for a standard format? So what I've done here is separated the cards by color. Sticklers out there are going to go nuts. I've messed up the color order a little bit, but I've done it for a reason. Forgive me. Okay, so we got a couple of cards that share a color. So the Catacomb Sifter here has black and green in its mana cost, so I put it between black and green. Just a better visual cue for me. And then over here we have Reflector Mage and Noyandar. That has the white and blue, so I put it between the white and blue stacks. So within these stacks, I've separated it by mana cost. So down here we've got our little 1-drops, with the exception of Liliana's Indignation, which has that X cost along with it. And then all the way up to the 6 and 7 drops at the top here. So this is a really great way to start off when you're building a deck, especially a sealed deck. It gives you a real at-a-glance look at what cards you have, what does your mana curve look like. You know, we can easily see, all right, you know, all the way up here, oh, my 4-drops start way back here, and then with black here, they start up here. Red's here a majority of that's pretty cheap. So you can kind of get your mana curve at a glance here. It also lets you see all the cards at once. So next what you want to do is identify the bombs. What cards in this spread here are worth building a deck around, and you definitely want in a deck because they just shine. There's a couple of examples here. Obviously the Westvale Abbey, this is just a bomb. It's a land that taps for colorless mana. You can also spend mana to put out tokens, although granted a lot of mana. It needs a lot of mana to put out tokens. But then if you sacrifice creatures, you can flip it into Ormondal here. Just a bomb of a creature. It's a 9/7 flyer with lifelink, indestructible, haste, massive creature. This card, especially from such a limited, such a limited card selection here, this could be a huge game changer for just about any deck. And I'll point out that even though the prince here is a black creature, it has no mana cost. So it has, a cost, but it taps for colorless mana. So really, you could put this into any colored deck. So that's why it's such it's a diverse, flexible card. And so I'm definitely going to want to build something with this in it, just because it's that great of a card. Some other cards to identify would be these cards over here. The Reflector Mage can really do some work for you, as well as Noyandar here, especially with blue and white. You're casting a lot of instants and sorceries, and that will allow you to create land creature cards, which are kind of a pain to get rid of. A lot of removal spells say target non-land permanent, and so these are lands, so it's difficult to deal with land creatures, so that could do a lot of work for us. As you can see, we've got a lot of blue going on here. For brand new players, one strategy you might want to use is just how many cards do you have? What has the largest draw from? So if we were just going off of quantity of cards, you'd be wanting to build something with blue and then possibly green or black. So because of the Royal Shaper here, we have a lot of control spells going on. We've got Anticipate, which can really, you can shape your hand. You've got some Negate, Dispels going on, Sweep Away to control the board state, Spell Shrivel. I mean, we've got a lot of control going on blue. And then with the white here, we've got some big angels. So just blue-white control could really be a strong deck out of these cards. Those big flying angels can be kind of hard to deal with. Planar Outburst can wipe the board for you when you get in a bind. Just so blue-white here could be really strong. But another thing you have to consider when you start building your deck is your own play style. And personally, I usually like to play black-white aggro. It's just the deck I keep coming back to. I keep rebuilding black-white decks. I like how white puts out a whole lot of creatures, a whole lot of tokens, and then buffs those tokens. And then black supports it with those kill spells, and some of that messiness in the graveyard is a lot of fun. So I constantly come back to doing black-white. Unfortunately, with the white selection here that we have, there's very little token creation. Pretty much none. Ormondal is really the biggest token generator in the black-white selection we have here. So I'm gonna have to put aside my own preference there for the black-white aggro and turn to another option. Well, I do love playing black, so I'm gonna stick with black. As much as powerful a deck that we could build out of blue-white here, for my own personal playing style, I'm going to start with black and then build off of that. So we do have the Catacomb Sifter here, which does create a single little Eldrazi token. Could be very useful to sacrifice to the Westvale Abbey here. So that suggests possibly green. One thing about the Westvale Abbey, if we want the Abbey to support itself, we're going to need a lot of mana. It costs 5 to put out a single token, and then 5 to sacrifice those tokens to flip the Abbey. So the color that does a lot of mana fixing for us is in green, and we did get a good selection of mana fixing. Specifically, we've got the Groundskeeper here. You can return basic land from your graveyard to your hand. That's really useful if we're using something like Liliana's Indignation. We might be milling some of our own lands into the graveyard, and that will pull them back for us. The Groundskeeper will pull them back for us. So we've got some really great mana fixing going on, and I really think that for my own personal play style, and with what the cards we've got here, I'm going to build a green-black deck. Maybe if I have time, I'll put together a blue-white deck and see what that would look like. Unfortunately, red here just didn't get a really great pull. Red, what it does well is a lot of burn spells, those, that aggressive, dealing out damage just with your instants and sorceries. We've got the Shivan Dragon with the fire breathing, but again, you're going to need your mana fix to feed that. I mean, not only is it a 6-drop, but also you have to tap 1 extra for each point of fire breathing damage. And really, there's not a whole lot of burn spells going on here, just not enough to justify putting red in with this very limited card draw. So I'm going to eliminate red based off of that, and so I'm going to separate out the green and black cards here and give a look at building that deck. So the next step is to separate all of our cards by mana cost and by type. So we've got each of these rows here, or these columns, are by mana cost. So in the left here we have our 1 cost, 2, 3, all the way up to our 6 cost here. I've put out the 7-drop colorless things, but I'm not sure we're going to use those. I'm highly doubtful we'll use any of those. And then also at the top row we've got our creatures. In the center here are instants and sorceries, and then I've got the enchantments, some lands down here. This really isn't going to come into play until much later, so we can even just set these aside. Okay, so then what we're going to do is pull out the absolute must-haves in the deck. The cards that are really going to do the most work for what this deck is going to do. So Westvale Abbey, definitely going to do that one. Uvenwell Mysteries here. This is going to do a whole lot of work for us. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you get to investigate. So that gives a little extra draw. But also when you sacrifice a clue, when you resolve the clue artifact, you get a token onto the battlefield. So we want those creatures. We're going to be possibly sacrificing a lot of creatures. When we trigger the Westvale Abbey here, we're going to get 5 clue tokens, so that's useful, and also it'll help us generate the creatures that we're going to sacrifice to the Abbey. So I really wish I had more of this card. I would really like to put a full playset of the Uvenwell Mysteries into this deck, but we've just got the one. So that's definitely going in. Let's see, the Zulaport Cutthroat here is another one. Whenever the Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So we're going to be doing a lot of creature sacrificing in this deck. So using that, getting as much use out of those sacrificed creatures as we can is going to be useful. So I'm going to put the Zulaport Cutthroat in there. The Groundskeeper is going to do a lot of our pulling back lands from the graveyard. So we're going to put that one in. Let's see here. We've got, this is not too bad, but it doesn't really do a lot of work for us. I'm going to put it in because I'm pretty sure that's going to help. The Carrier Thrall, when it dies, you're going to put another token on the battlefield, so it's going to kind of replace itself. Useful there. And when another creature dies, put a counter on the Rot Shambler. There we go. Ornn Reef Invoker, not really. For 8, it gets +5/+5 and gains trample. Pretty cool, but not doing anything that we need to in this deck. Alright, the Lone Larva is going to let us go search for a basic land card. We're going to need to fix some of our mana, so that's going in. And the Quilled Wolf for 6, again, it's very similar to the Ornn Reef Invoker. It can buff itself up, but not so useful. So we'll put those here. And look at our 3 drops here. You gain life with the Vampire Envoy. Not too bad. Here we go. We can sacrifice a creature to put counters on the Voracious Null. That's pretty expensive for 2 counters, especially when we're going to want to be sacrificing those cards for other things, but let's go ahead and throw it in since it does work with the theme of the deck right now. Here we go. Crow Tidings. I'm going to put things into the graveyard. Could be useful. I'm going to put them on the maybe list here. Catacomb Sifter, we've already discussed why we want that one. Here we go, Lifespring Druid, going to do our mana fixing. Glad we have 2 of those. And here's another Stoic Builder, again, bringing more lands from the graveyard. And the Graph Mole could work a nice combination with the Uvenwell Mysteries. So let's throw that in here. And the Gloom Widow, not totally useful yet. Let's see, maybe we'll put it in, but I doubt it. Alright, so Mindbreaker, a processor, not really going to be useful. Yeah, these guys don't really do so much. So the Stallion of Ashmouth, not really doing too much for us. Blood Hunter Worm is kind of lame. Seed Guardian, when it dies, you put another creature back out. So let's put that in, because that gives us a little more use out of sacrificing a creature. So this is another one. We're going to be putting up more creatures. We need lots of creatures to sacrifice. Let's put the Pack Guardian in. Got 2 of them. I mean, they are the 4 cost. They're getting a little higher up there. And we do have to discard a land to put those tokens out, but it could be useful. So actually I'm going to put that in our maybe pile. but it's a strong contender to be thrown into the actual deck. And then the giant mantis, it gets reach. Maybe something that we would want in our sideboard in case we have to deal with some flying creatures. So now we're getting up into some of our higher cost cards. Really, we don't want a whole ton of 5 and 6 drops in the deck. So really, I mean, the twins are super creepy and scary, but we're not going to need them. No. Alright. And this is dealing with allies. I don't think we have a whole lot of allies going on here, so we're going to rule out there. Again, this is the Watcher on the Web, real strong card in Sealed, because it can just block a whole lot of creatures, but it's not doing what we want it to do. It's not doing what our deck does. So again, probably a sideboard possibility. So really, none of these 5-drop creatures are doing what we need, and that's fine, because they're getting pretty expensive. The Nightmare could be useful. It could get pretty big if we're getting a lot of our lands out, but maybe a sideboard thing. Soul of a Harvest, here we go. When a non-token creature enters the battlefield, you can draw a card. Useful card. It's one of the few rares. It is a 6-drop. I'm going to put this in the maybe category. And then this is another ally card, the Tajira Beastmaster. So I'm not going to put this one in again because it's the ally issue. We don't have a lot of allies, you know. So that's not going to go. So we've got our creatures selected. These are the creatures that we think will do a lot of work for us. And by our formula here, we need 20 creatures. So let's just simply count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19. And if we count the Westfield Abbey, that's 20 creatures right there. So this seems like a pretty good, that's including all of our maybes. So that's a pretty good starting point. So let's put these as in the deck. So next, let's turn to the instants, sorceries, and enchantments. Alright, I just realized I counted the Uvenwald Mysteries as a creature. It's actually an enchantment. See all the rest. Yeah, I didn't throw anything else in there. Okay, so we've got 19 creatures. Anyway, I will point out we're building a 60 card deck out of a very limited card pool. Generally sealed events, you're building a 40 card deck. But because this box says you're supposed to be able to build a deck, and generally, I mean, standard is standard, so I'm going to try and build a standard deck out of here. And I'm trying to keep it to 2 colors. So we are really stretching pretty thin out of our limited pool here. So next we're going to go down to our sorceries and instants, see what works for us. So here's another sacrifice a creature. So let's just put that here. Oh, and we've got 2 of them, and that's going to let us destroy target creature, let us have a sack outlet. When you're doing a lot of sacrifice, you need some way to sacrifice them. Exile target creature card from a graveyard and put a zombie token on the battlefield. Nice, we need some tokens, we need some creatures that we can sack, so let's put that one in. Liliana's Indignation, definitely going in. I should have pulled this one out earlier. So this one's going to be putting cards into our graveyard, and we're going to make our opponent lose life for each creature card in the graveyard this way. So far we don't have a whole lot of way to pull creatures out of our graveyard. Mostly we're pulling lands out of our graveyard so far, but I still think this is useful. And there's only one of them, so there we go. And then Vines the Recluse, not really. I mean, maybe, again, sideboards, giving you that reach if you really need to deal with, like, a whole deck of flyers. So our 2 costs, search for lands. We definitely need those. Rabbit Bite, that's going to help us deal with some big creatures if we've got, without dealing damage to our own. So that's going to be useful. There's 2 of them here. Let's put them both in just in case. Again, Plummet, destroy target creature with flying. Maybe we'll throw it in if we need to fill out the deck. Alright, Macabre Waltz here, as we discussed, definitely need this. We're going to get 2 creature cards from the graveyard to our hand. Very useful, nice little combination with Liliana's Indignation. And another sacked outlet to draw 2 cards. So let's put Altar's Reap in there as well. I'm a lot more liberal with putting in cards from my 1, 2, and 3 cost piles, even if they're not doing exactly what I need, just because having those cheap costs, you're going to be able to cast something at least, instead of sitting on big heavy cost cards. You don't want your deck to be really heavy on the expensive side. So to the slaughter, target player sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker. This is a sack outlet, possibly for ourselves and possibly to eliminate from the other side. Very useful card. It's going to be very diverse for us, offensively or defensively. So definitely going to throw that one in. Mind Rot could be useful. It's a little bit of control. Make our opponent discard cards. I'm going to put this one in kind of a maybe, because we're not really sure for any of that. We're just going to put this aside in the maybe here. Alright, this Grave Birthing gonna get us a token at least, and we draw a card. So let's throw that one in. It's instant speed, so that's nice too. And then, complete disregard, maybe not. And there we go. Return target creature card from a graveyard to its owner's hands. You gain 6 life. So if we're milling our own creatures into our graveyard, we're going to be able to want to return that. So very useful. We'll put that one in. Alright, and then we're coming up to our 4 costs. Biting Rain. If we're facing a lot of tokens on the other side, unfortunately our own tokens are going to be pretty susceptible to this, so I'm not jumping at the gun to put this one in. We'll put that on the maybe. And if Infuse the Elements, we're only playing 2 colors. This is not going to be useful because of the Converge. Alright, Throttle, a little kill spell, but it's, -4/4. It's a really expensive, not great version of Languish. Give 1 creature -4. Yuck. Alright, and then Incremental Growth, 5 costs for some counters, possibly, very possibly. It's not doing really anything that we're trying to get the deck to do. We want our deck to be as efficient as possible, and because we don't have really playset of any of these cards, most of any of the cards we have are 2 of the same. So we're just trying to find as many different ways to get the same combo going with different cards, since we don't get to rely on 4 of a single card that really does what we want it to do. So that brings us down to our enchantments. Sack outlet, put it in, and then open form, really not doing anything. So what do we have here for our instance sorceries and enchantments? We are looking to get about 16, maybe 17, because we're 1 creature short here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 14. Alright, so our maybes, I'm thinking we're going to throw all 3 of our maybes in. There we go. So that gets us to our number of 36 if we're going to do 24 lands, which isn't a bad place to go from here. We could throw in a couple. Let's see what we've got here in our colorless. Some of these artifacts, Bonesaw. I mean, it's cheap, I only get 2/1, but it's +1 attack. Really not useful. Explosive apparatus, meh. Hedron Crawler could get us a little extra mana. It only costs 2 to put down. Not terrible. Truth-based sensor, meh. And Chitinous Cloak. It's got menace, so it has to be blocked by 2 or more creatures. It's a decent one, but it's not really doing much for us. So let's throw the Hedron Crawler, because at least he's on theme. And we'll throw that into there. So now we're up to, we've got 37 cards, what we can fill out with our lands. And let's see how this deck looks. So the last step in our deck building process here is to determine how much of each color of land that we need to put into our deck. So now what I've done is separated out the cards by color and also by how many of each color that those cards need to be cast with. So we've got all of the black over here and green over here, and then for any card that needs more than just one of a specific color, I've separated out as well. So we here have our two green cost cards, like Soul of the Harvest here, which is 2 green and 4 colorless, and Biting Rain here, which has 2 swamps and 2 colorless. So this is going to help us determine how many swamps and forests that we need to put in. Catacomb Sifter I've set aside because he's equal. Same with Heathen Crawler, he's colorless, so, and then Wistvale Abbey here doesn't really have a mana cost. So we've got 17 of each color cards here. So black has 17, green has 17. Happened to work out that way. Kind of interesting. But what we can see is that black has a whole lot less of the dual cost cards here. Binding Rain here is only ever going to need, is the only black card that's ever going to need 2 swamps out at the same time. Otherwise, we could just find 1 swamp during the whole game and really be mostly okay. So our balance is going to be a little shifted towards green. So what I like to do is just count up the symbols, the color symbols, and do a little bit of algebra in my head and just figure out what the ratio should be. You know, instead of 50-50 green-black, if we've got like a 60% green symbols, then I'll put 60% of my lands to be green. So by my quick calculation, I've got 22 green symbols and 17 black. So that's approximately 55% green. So if we're doing 23 lands, we do have an odd number anyway. So 22 divided by 2 is 11, and I'm going to throw that extra 1 to the green side. So we're going to have, let's see, I've got my forests and my swamps here. And I've got these dual lands, these uncommon dual lands, the Foul Orchards. So that's going to count towards 1 of each, since we don't really need, you know, those are already balanced. So then we're going to need, in addition to that, 10 swamps, and then 11 of the forests. So 11 forests. Ten swamps. And assuming all of our mathematics have come out correctly, we should have a 60 card deck. So I've gone ahead and laid out the deck in its entirety. I've separated out by card type again and by mana cost, give a overview of the whole deck all at once. So what do I think of the deck? I think it's going to be fun. There's some really fun mechanics going on here. We've got some token generation, some creature generation. You know, I like some of these cards that just replace themselves when they die. So even after you sacrifice your creature, you still have another creature on the board. And all the different mechanics that use sacrifice creatures, that when you sacrifice you still get something out of it. You get possibly 2 things out of it. So I think that's going to be a fun mechanic. You know, I like that I'm going to be able to pull things out of the graveyard. That way those sacrifice creatures aren't necessarily gone forever. Is this deck going to do all that efficiently? Not really. The problem with only having 1 or possibly 2 of each card is that it's not going to be a very efficient deck, and it's not going to be able to win very quickly. So there is that problem with it, but you know, as long as you're not facing one of those massive, massive decks that are being thrown around at F&M right now, you're going to have fun. So what is this box good for? I think it's good for creating a couple decks out of it and throwing down some kitchen table Magic and get going playing right away. I know there's a lot of players that are coming back to Magic. Innistrad has created a lot of nostalgia for Magic for some of the older sets. And I think there's a lot of players coming back from a long hiatus who are looking to get back in. But one of the big hurdles about playing Magic is the price point. It can be pretty expensive to buy those top cards, and this is a pretty inexpensive way to jump back in, get playing right away, get a feel for some of the new mechanics, start playing casually with your friends, and then as you get going, build up your collection, do some trading, you're going to be able to start building more competitive decks. This is a great way to start a deck, and as you go, start replacing some of those cards, you know, get more of your play sets of some of the key cards, and make your deck more efficient. You know, that you can get a feel for the mechanics to start off with. So I think this is a great product for people jumping right back in, or people who just, you know, playing a sealed format. I mean, just like, even if you're a really experienced player, picking this up for just a little sealed event for yourself or maybe your friends, that's pretty fun. So not a bad product. I'm pretty satisfied with this. So because of how that worked, I'm actually going to build that blue-white deck, and I'm going to make a third video. I thought this was going to be a 2-part series, but it's going to be 3. So I've got someone lined up, they're going to play with me, and we're going to record a gameplay and test those 2 decks against each other and see how they do. Maybe I'm completely wrong and this deck is garbage. So keep an eye out for that and click that little subscribe button and you will get alerted to when that video posts. Go ahead and click the little thumbs up. Greatly appreciated. And if you want to pick up this box for yourself, then go on to your friendly local game shop, pick it up, support your local gaming community. But if you can't do that, go ahead and click that link down there in the description and pick it up from your friendly local massive online retailer and support my channel instead. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you around later. Bye!